Hey, what's up, guys? It's Timothy here. Day 2 of Modern Masters 2017 spoilers, and still a lot of great hits here. A couple cards we probably knew were coming, and then some really unexpected stuff. The card quality has been pretty high so far, and I'm not just talking about rares and mythics. The uncommons are actually pretty big hits right now, so we'll see what we get into here. Starting right off, before I even talk about the cards here, starting with Molten Rain, I wanted to kind of share something that I stumbled on reading an article. They wrote an article, I believe, yesterday about Damnation and why it took so long to reprint Damnation, but the really interesting part was in that article, they kind of explained the themes that were going on in Modern Masters Limited, and I kind of wanted to touch on that. Remember, if you're really here for some financial reason or you're here for modern playability or something like that, you're probably in the wrong spot because I like to focus on limited here. But if you look at this, they've got kind of the breakdown of the two color pairs, but notice there are only 5 two-color pairs that they're focusing on here. They said white-blue has kind of this blink mechanic, which we picked up on yesterday with the white-blue uncommon, I forget its name, and cards like Restoration Angel, so that one stood out. Blue-black instant control, lots of instants and counter spells. This is where like your Snapcaster Mage comes in handy. And, you know, spoiler, Snapcaster Mage is one of our cards today, but this is pretty ambiguous. So I don't know if we're expecting like what kind of counter spells we're expecting. I don't think we've actually seen any yet, but we might get things like Mana Leak, Spell Snare would be nice. Spell Pierce would be pretty sweet. You know, the pretty good counter spells, maybe even Cryptic Command could come back. As for black instants, we might have cards like Go for the Throat or Slaughter Pact or stuff like that. I have no idea what this really means. It's kind of vague. Black-red, this one was interesting. This and the green one. Black-red Unearth, specifically Unearth. Using the Unearth mechanic, which is a mechanic on creatures, which lets you bring those creatures back for a turn and give them haste, but then they're exiled at the end of turn. I just wanted to look real quick after stumbling on this at all the Unearth cards, and if you look through them, like they're pretty unimpressive for the most part. There aren't a lot that come to mind as even like highly playable cards. Like some of them I see in Commander every now and then. I know some of them have become a little bit more popular because of Dredge as a way to bring prized amalgams back by bringing a creature back to the graveyard. But Extractor Demon has a place in Commander. Fate Stitcher sees a lot of play in Jeskai Ascendancy, but it's not a very popular deck, and this doesn't seem like the type of thing you're going for in an aggressive deck, especially not your red-black decks. But as you can see, like, I'm not stopping to read every card here because, you know, they're fresh in the minds of a lot of people. This is one that stood out as a very likely reprint that we'll see in Modern Masters, Cathari Bomber, because it generates goblin tokens. What it does is when it deals damage to a player, you basically sacrifice it and get 2 1/1 red goblins. And as we've seen, there's like maybe that tiny little goblin thing going on. I think after reading this article, it's more on the lines of like maybe devour creatures are going to be here. So we might see like Dragon Broodmother or something like that. In fact, I would bet we see Dragon Broodmother. Maybe I'm wrong, but Cathari Bomber is a really interesting one here. But outside of that, you know, I don't think we're going to see Cataract Leviathan like this. I don't know, it's just not an exciting card. Rotting Rats I have seen pop up in dredge lists, same with Scourge Devils, just as a way to trigger it. We already know Sidrax's Spectre is in this set, which we'll see today as an uncommon instead of a rare, which is pretty sweet. This is the only real like standout Unearth creature. Each creature in your graveyard has Unearth 2 and a black, so you can bring back any creature from your graveyard for the turn, but it's exiled on end step and it gains haste, so on and so forth. But I don't know, Sidraxis is a blue creature as well, so I don't know whether we should expect to see Sidraxis or not, and if we do, I think it's a rare quality card. I don't think this needs to be a mythic rare by any means. That'd be pretty disappointing. And then there are just like some non-significant, like you've got a Cycler here, that's not the worst. Some you got a Pinger, like pretty insignificant cards here. So I don't know, red-black Unearth seems like a very like weirdly specific draft type or draft archetype for a mechanic that's not really like super well supported or anything. And then also going back to that, they mention red-green go wide. It's really nice to see that in red-green, which is pretty cool. And then the other one was green-white populate. Take advantage of the populate mechanic from Return to Ravnica. So again, there are even less populate cards than there are Unearth cards. But if you just look down the list, like you've got a Fog with populate, you've got you know make two birds. Growing Ranks is like not a great limited card, but it's a pretty popular commander card. But this isn't Eternal Masters, it's Modern Masters. V2 Ghazi was played like once in Standard, if I remember. Sundering Growth's a decent sideboard card. Tristani is really the only populate card that stands out to me as something that could see reprinting. And again, I don't think it needs to be a mythic spot. This could very easily be a rare when it comes to the set, because it's not like so overpowered or anything like that. It's just a very good card, but it'd be pretty disappointing to see Tristani be reprinted as a mythic in a Modern Masters set. But I do have high hopes that if Populate specifically is like something they're looking to do here, then we might see Tristani be reprinted. And then they're just kind of some random other cards. Wayfarer Temple is not bad either. If you remember in, I believe it was Modern Masters 2, they reprinted Scion of the Wild, which used to be a rare, and they bumped it down to a common. So we could see Wayfarer Temple at like uncommon or something. That'd be pretty sweet. But yeah, I don't know. That just caught me off guard because it didn't seem like super well defined. Like there's just not enough to make a whole mechanic out of such a large set here. But the other important thing, before I promise we're talking about spoilers today, they said they are going to be focusing on the shards here, which is really cool. And it was kind of obvious from yesterday, but I didn't want to jump the gun and go ahead and say it. But it's pretty much confirmed here that you're going to have your enemy colored like 2 color strategies. You're also going to have your 3 color strategies, and it's pretty obvious that they're pushing towards 3 cards. This looks like Khans of Tarkir, very much so, and you'll see what we mean here. Tons of triple color creatures, lots of mana fixin'. So if you were the type of person who liked drafting 5 color control decks or 5 color like late game decks or stall decks in Khans of Tarkir, this might just be your set. So let's jump into our spoilers and see what we have. We have Molten Rain to start us off. Molten Rain actually does see modern play. Not a whole lot. It's mostly a sideboard card, but it's pretty good against the decks it's good against. I think Burn usually plays it in the sideboard against Tron decks specifically. And I think Scapeshift might play a couple copies as well against things like Tron, but I'm not 100% sure there. But Molten Rain's a fine card. It's not the type of card you're going to take very highly in Limited, because still land destruction isn't that impressive, but it's actually pretty good as far as limited land destruction goes. So if you see your opponent splashing for something ridiculous, you can snipe them off their splash land and deal an extra little bit of damage. It's not the worst thing in the world. This card here is Harmonize, 4 mana, 2 and double green for a sorcery, draw 3 cards. Really simple card. It's actually a really good limited card. 4 mana, draw 3 is usually pretty fantastic, and if this format doesn't end up super fast, which it's really not looking like it so far, then Harmonize could just be a really good card. I believe Harmonize was also in Eternal Masters. Am I wrong about that? I think this is new art for it too. I'm not sure, but what Harmonize was in Eternal Masters. Yeah, it definitely was, but just a solid card. Not much to say about it. How about the Swag Father? How about Thragtusk, right? Thragtusk is pretty insane already. Just a ridiculous card, the type of card that when your opponent plays it in Limited, you just have to groan, right? It's a great cube card too, and it's very popular. It's not like the card that's going to make your money back. I think Thragtusks are maybe around $4 or $5 a piece. I'm not sure on the exact number there, but notice they put Thragtusk and Restoration Angel in this set, which was like very dominant during Innistrad Standard, and a thing you could do in Innistrad Limited, or not Innistrad Limited, because Thragtusk was a core set card. But Thragtusk is a card I'm always happy to start my draft off with. If I'm not going to open like a $70 rare, I'm fine opening a card like this and just having such a strong beater. And if blue-white is the blink colors, then it's really easy to imagine a deck where you just have like Bant Blink or something like that, and you can really take advantage of Thragtusk. This is the type of card that makes, I do want to remind myself the name of that other card real quick, the blue-white spell that we saw yesterday. Vanish into Memory. Like, this is so good with Thragtusk, isn't it? It's just like the best thing in the world. Oh, another thing I mentioned, or should mention about Vanish into Memory while I'm here, that popped into my mind when they mentioned Populate, is you can exile an opponent's token and draw cards equal to its power, but you only discard when the creature comes back into play. So their token never comes back into play. You never have to discard. Isn't this like insane against tokens or something? I have no idea. I'm still waiting on someone to tell me like when was this card relevant. I did learn that it came from a you create the card type thing. the same kind of thing that made Demonic Pact and Waste Not, I believe, where players designed the cards and there was like some vote into it, but pretty interesting stuff there. Anyway, Venser, Shaper Savant. This is a money card, by the way, or will have been before being reprinted here. With the From the Vault art, I think this is the only time they've used the From the Vault art outside of From the Vault 20. But Venser is a fantastic creature all the way around. It's a mini kind of counterspell. It seems like it fits into multiple categories here, like blue-white being the blink category, and red-blue, or blue-black being the instant control or whatever they called it category. Venser is just great. If you've never played with Venser, it's awesome. It's a creature. It's kind of like a Mystic Snake, but not a permanent counter. And the fact that it can effectively remand your opponent's spells is really sweet. So Venser, not only a card that you'll take for the money, but a card that's also just really, really good. And something I'm really happy to see reprinted here, even though I wish they'd use the other art on it. I love the other art on Venser. Speaking of art, Ranger of Eos, I'm pretty sure this is new art for Ranger of Eos. I don't know if this is like a Judge promo art or anything, but Ranger of Eos, for those of you who don't know, it's not a super popular card, is 4 mana for a 3/2. When it enters battlefield, you can search for up to 2 creatures with mana cost 1 or less and put them into your hand, and then you shuffle your library. I was going to mention Squadron Hawk. Like, is this actually a Squadron Hawk right here? It might be, but the only time I remember seeing Ranger of Eos is in Soul Sisters, which, again, isn't like a super popular or even like a tier 1 deck, but it's pretty good. And Ranger of Eos in that deck lets you go find your like Soul Warden and your Squadron Hawks, and I think Martyr too might be a 1-power creature, but I have no idea how this card's going to shape up for Limited until I see the whole set. Maybe that means Squadron Hawks in here. Maybe that means like Soul Attendants in here. That's kind of what this hints at. Otherwise, it's just a really random reprint, right? But new art is sweet, and it's just a fine card on its own. Moving right along, we're getting into some gold cards here. Marshall Sutcliffe, one of my favorite Magic players, wrote an article today about the 5 triple color uncommons that they put in this set. One of them being Woolly Thoktar, just the biggest beater of all time as far as mana cost goes, right? 3 mana, red, green, white for a 5/4, and it's very simple. Like, no abilities on it. If you can play this on turn 3, you just get to dominate, get 10 damage in. This is like the Calciderm of the set, I imagine. If you can play it on curve, your opponent's going to have a very hard time dealing with it. And if they put anything like Birds of Paradise in here or any kind of 1-mana accelerant creature, like, there's going to be some real hell to play with Woolly Thoktar. It's an uncommon as well. I believe it was in Shards or whatever set Woolly Thoktar was in, but it's an exciting little reprint and the type of card that you really want to prioritize mana fixing when you have something like this. So Naya Beats definitely here in Limited, which seems really awesome, right? Rock's Warmonk is very similar. Well, very similar as far as like being a very good card for 3 mana. It's a completely different set of stats, but a 3/4 lifelink for 3 mana is insanely good. Very hard to race. It's going to give you a huge life buff before people have the means to deal with it, and it's a very good attacker and blocker on top of that. Again, having the 3 colors by turn 3 may not happen every single time, so you have to have like a fallback plan, but there's so much mana fix in this set at common and uncommon and even rare that it shouldn't be too hard to pull off these 3-color creatures. I'm thinking of like Savage Knuckleblade from Khans of Tarkir. I remember drafting that card a lot and not really having that much trouble playing it on turn 3 or even stalling a turn and putting it on turn 4. So we shall see how easy it is to do that. But I imagine if you are really heavy on these 3-drop creatures that you should be able to play them pretty easily. This includes Sprouting Thragtusk, which is Jund colors, black, red, and a green for a 3/3, and when it dies, you get 3 Saproling creatures. Remember, they said red, black, or red, green is the go wide strategy in this set. So it's not red, white this time, but I'm sure there's a lot of overlap. This is just a hell of a card to deal with over time. It's going to trade pretty favorably. Like a 3/3 for 3 is already a good card even in a set like this, I imagine. And then it replaces itself essentially with another 3/3 just spread out. And if that's what red-green wants to be doing in the first place, like, you're happy to trade this creature off. I don't know if there's going to be like a mini sacrifice engine or anything like that, but this is the type of card you're happy sacrificing, I think. Still in this cycle of 3-color shard uncommons, we have Tower Gargoyle, essentially 4 mana for a 4/4 flyer. The extra mana does make it a turn later than all the rest of these guys, but it also means you're more likely to play this on curve, right? Getting 3 colors of mana by turn 3 is not always easy, but doing it by turn 4 is just that much easier, and being able to play this on turn 4 seems pretty easy, and then you get to just dominate the air. 4/4 flyer for 4 is an incredibly good card. Marshall Sutcliffe did mention this in his article, and it is worth considering that Tower Gargoyle is an artifact, so it may not matter really that much that it's an artifact or not, but if we see a card like Sundering Growth to populate that, the naturalize that also populates, like that is a relevant interaction here, that we do have a creature that's an artifact. And then I believe there's one more. It is, yeah, we already mentioned it. So Drax's Spectre is 3 mana for a 3/2 in Grixis colors. It used to be a rare, shifted down to an uncommon. It has flying. When it deals combat damage, your opponent discards a card, or the person you hit discards a card, and then you can unearth it for 1 and a black. So a solid flyer as is, a 3-power flyer with no downside is already a really good card for 3 mana. And then being able to unearth this means that if your opponent leaves themselves open and you have this guy in your graveyard, you could just take a swing at them real quick, essentially bolt them for 3 mana, and also make them discard a card. So something that's a little scary to see on the other side of the board, and probably a really strong card in this limited format. Speaking of strong cards, all right, so right here, these are the big ones for today, really. Griselbrand, which we knew. I think it'd be a little more exciting if we didn't know about it, but Griselbrand is just fantastic. We haven't seen a lot of reanimation here, so I don't know what Griselbrand's doing in the set. I have no idea at all, but I imagine we'll see. My vote, or my wish list, is really Goryo's Vengeance, but we might see something like Animate Dead again, or, well, Animate Dead's not in Modern, is it? I don't know. Something along those lines. We might even see, what's it called? Through the Breach, which is possible. Through the Breach Griselbrand is like a real thing that happens. But Goryo's Vengeance would be, this is a great opportunity. If you want to keep this like train rolling of awesome reprints, reprint Goryo's Vengeance, because it's fantastic. Griselbrand, I don't know how we're casting it in this format, but if it's easy, or if there's a strategy around it, like Griselbrand just wins the game. I have to imagine in Limited as well. I didn't play Avacyn Restored. I know a lot of people don't like Avacyn Restored, but I've got to imagine Griselbrand was like really good if you ever cast it, right? That's a big if. 8 mana is a lot if you just have to hard cast it, but if you're that blue-black instant control deck and you're able to control the deck and then just drop Griselbrand, you win the game, right? I have to imagine you win the game. Snapcaster Mage, confirming that the box art guy was in fact Snapcaster Mage. Is a mythic. Point that out. This Snapcaster Mage is a mythic, whereas in Innistrad it was a rare. But I think Snapcaster Mage deserves a spot as a mythic. Not only is it like absurdly powerful, like it's innocuously powerful. It doesn't maybe look like it to people who haven't played with or against it very much, but Snapcaster is such a unique, cheap, and efficient threat and effect on like a creature with flash that I think it deserves a mythic spot. Compare Snapcaster Mage to like any of the iterations it's had lately, Torrential Gearhulk, Goblin Dark Dwellers, and like, you know, Gearhulk, as good as it is still not as good as Snapcaster Mage. And that just goes to show that, like, I think Gearhulk deserves to be a mythic in its limited format, so why not Snapcaster Mage, right? This is probably the biggest chase rare from the set. I don't want to, actually, maybe I shouldn't say that. We haven't seen Liliana yet. So we'll see. I don't know. Maybe we'll see Liliana. Maybe we won't. But my money's on we'll see her probably tomorrow. But yeah, Snapcaster Mythic. Deadeye Navigator, like Soulbond, in my opinion, is one of the worst mechanics. Like, not worst, but one of my least favorite. Because of how confusing it is and hard to track and stuff like that. But Deadeye Navigator, I don't think anyone denies this card is busted. If you can resolve it and then have extra mana, like, it's really hard for your opponent to interact, and this goes on theme with the blue-white blinking. This lets you get immense amounts of value out of something with an enter the battlefield trigger, or even a leave the battlefield trigger. Imagine pairing this with Thragtusk, where you can pay to get a 3/3 when it leaves battlefield, have it come back in, get a 5/5, and you can do, or get 5 life, and then repeat that for every 2 mana you have. If you have open mana, Deadeye Navigator is almost impossible to kill. It's so hard to get rid of it. It's very similar to like Aethertide Whale for Aether Revolt, where as long as like you have to have multiple removal spells in order to hope to get rid of it. And it's a 5/5. Like, that's pretty good for a blue deck too. So Deadeye Navigator, it's cheap card. It's not really exciting, but it is a strong card, and I think you'll take it in limited. Wrapping up, well, actually, still got a good bit here. Talk about these two at the same time. So let's get Might of Old Krosa out of the way. Might of Old Krosa is a legacy staple, or I keep saying legacy when I mean to say infect. It's an infect staple. It gives a creature +2/+2, and then if you cast it during your main phase, that creature gets +4/+4 instead. So it is an instant, but you get a bigger bonus for using it as a sorcery, essentially. It's an uncommon here, and this is a value uncommon. Might of Old Krosa is like almost a $10 uncommon, I think, from Time Spiral. And even though it's only played in like one deck, or it might get played in like those weird Kiln Fiend decks too, I'm not really sure. It's never been reprinted, and it's super expensive. So this is actually a really nice reprint. It doesn't really, I'm not sure like where it's going to fit in limited right now. It may just be like a value pick, or a card that they're like, you know what, we have a spot open, let's go ahead and do Might of Old Krosa. But I'm fine with that. Just getting more copies of this out there with new art nonetheless is pretty sweet. The other two here, I wanted to talk about them at the same time because they're both similar. They're both miracle spells. You have Temporal Mastery, which is extra turn with Miracle for 2 mana instead of 7 mana at a sorcery. And then Bonfire of the Damned, which people know is very, very strong in limited if you can Miracle it, and not really that bad in limited if you have to pay the full cost. So essentially, you're paying like 3 mana to deal 1 to each creature, or to a player and each creature they control, or 5 mana to deal 2 to target player and each creature they control. But if you miracle this, it's just game over. Your opponent's not only taking like 4 or 5 damage, but you also get to shoot all of their creatures, and it doesn't even affect your creatures. Bonfire of the Damned is ridiculous, and even though, again, it's like a $5 card, it deserves a mythic spot. This is similar, I think, to Comet Storm from Modern Masters 2, where it's not the type of thing you want to open when you're just cracking packs out of your booster box, but it is the type of thing you'll be happy to open if you're in a limited format. Temporal Mastery, I'm not so sure about. 7 mana to take an extra turn is not a real limited effect that you want, and I'm not sure how easy it's going to be to set up Miracle, so I have no idea what to think of Temporal Mastery yet. This I would be a little more disappointed about if it was a mythic out of a pack, and I do think Temporal Mastery has a higher price tag because it's really popular in Commander, where you can like Mystical Tutor and make all of your friends miserable. But Bonfire is like the definite hit miracle card here. Grafdigger's Cage, I've got to imagine this is sideboard only in limited, but it is like it's crawled all the way up to like a $10 card. So again, this is a rare that they're like, you know what, let's put it out there. Could Grafdigger's Cage have been an uncommon in the set? I don't know. I don't think its effect is like necessarily rare. It's just graveyard hate, but it is pretty strong graveyard hate, and this is a way for them to get more copies of it out there. So that's kind of what I see there, and there's one more card like that for today. 3 more cards to talk about, and then that's all we've got for today. Path to Exile and Inquisition of Kozilek. These are fantastic reprints, again at uncommon. Path to Exile has been reprinted a bunch of times, and it's still a $10 card, right? It's one of the best removal spells in Modern, possibly the best removal spell you could ask for outside of Swords to Plowshares for limited. It just deals with anything, and you should be first picking this if you have a bad rare. It's just it's really hard to beat Path to Exile, not only on value for uncommons, but also just as creature removal. It's fantastic. Although, you know, the same thing they say about Modern, giving your opponent a land in limited can be pretty backbreaking if you're not able to keep up pressure or keep your opponent off their creatures. But Path to Exile, great reprint. Inquisition of Kozilek, also very unexpected, because we just saw this with the same art in Conspiracy 2 just a couple months ago, not even that long, like back in September, October, and everybody was clamoring that Inquisition was reprinted. But in Conspiracy, they printed it as a rare, and here they're printing it as an uncommon. So maybe they're doing that because the price didn't really drop as much as they want or something like that. But Inquisition is basically the Thoughtseize of Modern. It's in many cases just a better Thoughtseize when it comes to the Modern format. In Limited, it's still just a discard spell. Even if it gets something good, it's not going to get your opponent's big like game-ending bomb. So I would stay away from Inquisition in Limited unless you're value drafting. But just having this card reprinted again in such a short time seems pretty good. That tends to lower the price of cards pretty drastically when you rapidly reprint it. Like if you look at Ghostly Prison and how many times it's been reprinted in the last year, and then look at the price fall of Ghostly Prison, like we could see something like that with Inquisition. And it's funny that they reprinted this as an uncommon when they just did it as a rare Conspiracy, and everybody thought, wow, Inquisition, right? But there were a lot of complaints that it was a rare in that set, because it's not, like, for limited purposes, it's not a rare quality card. You see commons and uncommons do this type of thing all the time. And then the last two here, Stony Silence, very similar to Grafdigger's Cage, and probably even worse so, where we may not see a real use for this in Limited, but it's getting more copies out of there with new artwork too. Stony Silence, possibly, if you were to make a list of like top 5 to 10 most important sideboard cards for Modern, Stony Silence is definitely up there. It is the premier hoser of Affinity, and I find it weird that this was in this set, right? Because we've seen, what, one artifact that really matters, and it doesn't have an activated ability. Same with Grafdigger's Cage. There's just no activated ability here. So I don't know what Stony Silence is doing in this set yet. It may be like, if you remember, was it Modern Masters 2? It might have been Eternal Masters, but one of those sets had a Leyline of Sanctity in it, which was almost useless. Like, there was no like real burn deck. There's no reason for you to want to take a Leyline of Sanctity and actually put it in your deck, but it's such an important card in Modern sideboards that you would take it anyway if you wanted it, and you'd be happy to have it. So Stony Silence, not like a bomb that you want to open for Limited. This is the type of card. It's funny because like these sets are so wildly geared towards two different things, both reprints and Limited, that there are some cards like Grafdigger's Cage and Stony Silence that you really want to open when you're just cracking like prize packs, but not cards you want to open when you're doing a sealed event or a draft or something like that. So Stony Silence, Grafdigger's Cage, sideboard cards, and it remains to be seen how useful those are going to be. Looks like of the two, Grafdigger's Cage might get the nod for being a little bit better, as it does hose Unearth if you think about that. And then the final one here, a really weird card, Zur the Enchanter. For those of you who don't know, it's Esper colors, 4 mana total for a 1/4 fly-in human wizard. And when it attacks, you get to tutor up an enchantment with mana cost 3 or less and put it straight on the battlefield. Are we going to see like a heavy enchantment theme here? I have no idea. Like, these last two are kind of throwing me off. Like, artifacts, enchantments, like, we haven't seen a lot. Is there anything that even works with Zur the Enchanter right now that we know about? I have no idea. I haven't been paying that much attention. But anyway, that is the last card. Zur the Enchanter is a pretty popular commander card. And they actually just made a Judge promo of Zur the Enchanter last year, which is pretty sweet. But really unexpected card here. I wish they'd do Send Triplets. That's what I really want to see as my Esper card. Please print Send Triplets. Do I have a reason for saying that? No, but it's a really sweet card. But yeah, look at these spoilers. This is awesome. Like, just cards that actually matter for Modern. That's why people hated Modern Master 2015. It's a Modern Master set that had such a minimal number of cards that actually matter for Modern. If you look, just you don't even have to like study it. You can just glance through this and say, oh, like boom, 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 all these uncommons plus Terminate, like. That's 4 really valuable, really strong, really widely played uncommons for different strategies. Boom, boom, sideboard cards. Modern is almost dictated by sideboard cards, right? The matchups are very dependent on it. Boom, boom, these big bomb creatures that people just need for their decks. And then, you have your kind of like limited filler here. So I don't know. This is shaping up to be really, really nice. And I'm really excited to see what else we get here. So before I go, as always, I'm going to go ahead and refresh this, make sure we haven't seen any new cards pop up, and we have not. And yeah, check this channel out for more spoilers tomorrow. I suggest you go read some of the articles that are coming up about these cards because they're really sweet on Magic Gathering website under their articles. archive. But anyway, my name's Timothy. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today, and I will, as always, see y'all next time.